All right, so welcome back to the East Kentucky Tournament Trail Podcast. It's been a while since we've had one of these. I know, in speaking for myself, it just seems like life is ultra busy right now. I've got a 13-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 6-year-old, and I don't know, squeezing fishing in there's a struggle, but we're going to do the best we can going forward, and we're going to try to get a few of these podcasts out to you this winter time anyway. Tonight we're blessed to be joined by Mark Menendez. I don't know, Mark, I guess you could say that you are the best fat bass fisherman, going by all the data in the history of Kentucky. I mean, I don't know if you ever thought about it like that, but that's the way I see it.
I wouldn't go there. I've just been at it longer than anybody else has on the Bassmaster Trail. So there's some good in that. There's some good finishing in, and there's a lot of finishes in there I really wouldn't want to talk about. But it's been a long career, and I'm just very, very lucky to have done what I've been able to do all my life.
Well, tonight is the first night I actually met you, but having said that, you've been taking me fishing for a long time. I know Bryan Allen relates to this. We always talk about Ray Scott raised us on bass fishing.
Yep.
There's nothing better than that big blue trophy. That's the goal deep down for all of us. Chris, Tim, I know, all of you guys can speak to that effect, but we're also joined tonight by Tim McDonald, who's done a little trophy chasing himself. Tim's won a bunch of money out there chasing greenfish and brownfish. Tim, thanks for joining us tonight.
I really appreciate it, Jason, and it's a real pleasure to be on here with these sticks that you've got to join us tonight, and especially good to see my old buddy Mark. Me and him roomed together early on in the BASS days, and I've really enjoyed watching his success over the last few years.
And we're also joined by Bryan Allen. Bryan is the so what's your official title, Bryan, with the East Kentucky Tournament Trail? I mean, we need a title for this. President? Well, is that what this is? I mean, what would we call you?
But I don't know. But Tim needs to watch his language when it's saying sticks. I'm more of a cane pole. So I'm a as my buddy Mike Burchett put it best last year, I'm eat up with a sickness of chasing bass, tournament fishing, which, just like you said, this day and time, it's hard to come by, man, because we're coaching and we got kids dancing. We just got back from dance competition, but that's whatever you want to call me.
So Mark, Bryan has put together, he had this crazy idea a couple years ago. I'm gonna put this together just a quick summary real quick. East Kentucky Tournament Trail, it's a bunch of dudes that really competitive trail. We're averaging about 40 boats per event. I don't care what time of year it is. We got a group of guys that show up and want to fish. It's become something awesome, in terms of money that is given away. It all goes back. Guys are winning good purses of money. It's probably comparable to the BFLs, on that end. So, he's built something really cool here in Eastern Kentucky. But one of the things, and I saved Chris for last because he's going to talk a little bit about some of the things that one of our passions is getting kids into fishing, number one. Sure. But also, preserving opportunities that we have, that somebody afforded us. One of my quotes that speaks, I guess it's a proverb that speaks to my heart is, when old men plant trees whose shade they'll never sit. That's what this is all about. I'm a teacher by trade. I want to see my kids, their kids, have the same opportunities that we've been afforded to catch bass. So I'm not afraid to ask uncomfortable questions. I think I can speak for all y'all in that way, because sometimes it takes uncomfortable questions to get things done that we want to see done. And speaking of Bryan, East Kentucky Tournament Trail, right now you can register. You have to register before the first event. That's one of our rules. So get that registration off of our Facebook page. You can get that mailed into Bryan with your $100 registration check. Chris, I know casting for kids, that's something that's near and dear to your heart, something that you do an awesome job with. So if you just, when you introduce yourself, you want to talk about how people can register for that.
Yeah, it's first of all, it's an honor to be on here with, first of all, one of your guys that you grew up locally looking up to, Tim McDonald, fishing, bed fishing, BP tournament, that big trailer. That's where a lot of the ideas come from, casting for kids with me. And then watching the TV hero, get to be on here tonight with him, Mark, watching him with Barkley through the years. I mean, it's good to be on here with two guys you've looked up to for years, and it's an honor. But casting for kids is it's been this is going into the 8th year. We've been very blessed with a lot of people to help us and come together, and 100 volunteers probably. We've been able to put on what we put on to raise money for kids, and all the money goes to Shriners Hospitals, and all this is volunteer help, and everybody donates their own time. Tony Gulla and I the last 2 weeks have run everywhere trying to get people signed up for Douglas tournament March 26th, Kentucky tournaments April the 23rd and 4th. Those two venues are 100%. Money goes to the Children's Hospital at Shriners in Lexington. We give back good to the anglers here locally in the community at Douglas and here both Eastern Kentucky. But our most important thing we do is we put our kids tournament on this year. It's going to be June the 4th weekend, which is free fishing weekend for all kids. Won't have to buy a license, and we're going to build this thing this year up to where my goal is to have 300 kids. And I've got a month and a half to work on it after our last term to put it on. Last year we had 140 kids out there. Every child got a rod and reel, T-shirt, a lot of medals, first, second, third place. This year, my goal is to have 300 there. I'm not going to stop till we get that. That's awesome. We got a new sponsor coming out this year. That's a big one that I'm going to announce here in a couple weeks. That is contributing big, and it's a big sponsorship. So that's just for the kids tournament, and I'm very happy to be announcing that.
And Chris, so to register for Casting for Kids, we got great website, casting4kids.net. You can go over there, you can register online, you can pay online, you can take care of everything online. I know because I built it.
Yeah, I was getting ready to plug you for that. You've done an awesome job, Jason, and thank you for having us all on here tonight. And that was a great job on that website building it.
Well, if it works, it was a great job. If it doesn't work, it was somebody else, right?
It's working.
So what we wanted to transition to, tonight we want to talk about fishery management. Mark, I know when speaking of you, to me, the video that speaks about Kentucky Lake and your involvement, there's been some issues with the carp and I know you've experienced that lake for a long time, but for me, speaking from my personal experience, the video that you put out, I think it was you, with the ditch that had all the carp in the ditch. Literally, there was many fish in the ditch as there was water. That was so eye-opening, and I think that got the conversation started about the problems that your lake was experiencing. So just speak about maybe your involvement and the things that the lake's experienced, maybe where it's at, and just kind of give us an update in that regard.
Well, it's kind of a two-part system here in that we started the fight here locally. Judge Wade White, Judge Executive of Lyon County, which is over near Catawba, Kentucky on Barkley, is probably one of the most active and best county judge executives in the
something
froze up on us.
Was doing to the economic issues that we are having around here. He was seeing the money go, people not come in, businesses closing. So I called Wade and went to meet with him. He really didn't know who I was. He knew a little bit about me. He knew that I fished nationally. And I said, look, whatever I can do to help, I'm here. I want to be part of this. So that got me started here locally, and those videos came out. We were able to get some monies and to come to this end of the state to start putting up those barriers, to giving subsidies to the commercial fishermen. And Yamaha stepped in with their conservancy group called Right Waters. And I have been to Washington, D.C. on behalf of Yamaha, behalf of all fishing license holders, all fishing men, women, kids. And I've been in front of at least 60% of the House and the Senate, talking to all these members. It's amazing how many sportsmen we have there. It's also amazing those people that represent areas that there's not a lot of water in the urban areas, how interested they were in the economics. So we were lucky enough to get a $45 million stipend for Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, and Mississippi, and another $26 million for Kentucky. And that's where we started with this. Other companies have jumped on board. AFCO is another company that has helped us. They gave a $10,000 stipend that went directly to the commercial fishing subsidy, so those guys could get another 4 or 5 cents per pound. It makes a big difference. That $10,000 equated to a quarter a pound more paid out and another 250,000 pounds of fish out of our waterways. I'm seeing less carp in Kentucky and Barkley Lakes right now. I'm seeing more below the dam. So we're seeing a good stoppage of those getting into the Tennessee River. They are from end to end. When we had our Bassmaster Elite Series event at Tellico and Loudon last year, I was way up Tellico in the back of a creek up there and got on a creek channel bend, and I met a wall of carp, and you could see them plain as day on your depth finder. I could see them on forward facing sonar and look and see, and I knew exactly what those were. So we do have them from end to end in the Tennessee River, but we still do have hope. If we can get them stopped between, let's say, Pickwick at Wilson Dam and Pickwick, we'll really slow them down furthering up to Ural's end of the Tennessee River on the further east end. Lots of things have been tried. New methods have brought in. We've got a new method of netting. It's called trap netting that the Fish and Wildlife of the state of Kentucky have been working with some local anglers down there. And doggone it, guys, that dang way of catching them is really efficient, and it is very, very minimal bycatch. They did a study a month or two ago. They caught one channel catfish and one red-eared sunfish, and that's the only 2 game fish they caught. And they had about 35,000 pounds in a matter of 2 hours of Asian.
Wow.
Those kind of things are really, really exciting to me.
Yeah, and I know, one thing that we've talked about is supplementing, local largemouth populations, and I saw in Kentucky Lake, and real quick, Mark and you guys, just help that maybe the average person that's watching this podcast that doesn't understand, Mark, I guess I'll hit you with this question. There's a northern strain, then you got the Florida strain, and then you hear a lot of people talking about the F1s or the tiger bass. So just kind of give the general user maybe a difference in those 3 fish.
Okay, the northern strain of largemouth bass is what we all grew up fishing for. It is a Kentucky resident, and it lives basically from coast to coast. The Florida strain fish is basically down in the very southeast. You have a little bit of that Florida. The actual Florida range is from southern Virginia, southeastern Virginia, through Georgia into Florida and around over to Mobile Bay. That's about as far as it goes. And that is the fish that is from Florida. It is typically a big growing fish. It grows bigger. The growing season is longer. So you get big fish there. But when you take the northern and cross it with that Florida, then you get the Hulk. You get the green Hulk. You get a superhero that when those first fish are crossed and those first offspring, they're called your F1s. They possess characteristics of both fish. The northern strain of fish is a very aggressive fish, where that Florida fish is a slower growing fish, or not quite as aggressive, but it grows big. So you get those two and you get a very aggressive, fast growing bass. And I have a couple lakes around here, Jason, that I get to film in that have F1s in them. They're 3.5 to 4 years old and they're already bumping 7 pounds. Wow. So that's what you get when you get that F1. Now, if we get some other biologists on here, they may go to argue that it's not what we want in our lakes. When you put that Florida gene in, you dilute that northern largemouth strain down some, But those are arguments that are ongoing in all of our fish and wildlife groups right now. So that's kind of the overall with the three fish.
Mark, I would love to see, and I would love to see genetics of each local lake. And I'm just being honest, and this has happened. We have invasive grass in our lakes that guys probably brought back in live wells at some point. I'm just being honest. Who's to say they didn't bring a bass in a live well? It's happened. So I'm one of those guys that I just feel like, because that's what I've heard too from Fish and Wildlife is, hey, we have the purest northern strain.
Right.
I would argue they don't. I would love to see and I'm sure they probably have that data. I couldn't find it, but I'm just curious, to what effect maybe some other genetics have, been implanted locally, whether they know it or not.
There's no telling what you've got in the gene pool, but Tennessee did implement and put Floridas in 10, 15 years ago, and they're continuing putting Floridas in on the Tennessee River in Tennessee. The best case scenario of that is Chickamauga. There are giants that get caught out of there on a regular basis. And you look at those fish and you can definitely tell that there's some Florida strain in those fish. Those big eyes, they're very tall, they're very wide, and they're very, very bulky. And so you're seeing that. They've done that in a couple more lakes, and they've done it in Kentucky Lake down in the Tennessee portion. Like, one of the unique things, Jason, that happens when you put that F1 hybrid in the lake, that Florida strained fish in the lake, that becomes home. That is absolutely where it identifies with, it imprints with, and when you put it in as a fingerling, it doesn't stray very far from there. So what we did find out in those bays in which they got stocked on Kentucky Lake, that's where most of those giant bass were reared and grew up. So Really? It's kind of a unique thing that they become homebodies.
So am I correct in saying Kentucky Lake is the only lake in Kentucky where I saw they put Florida strain in Kentucky Lake, right?
They did in the Tennessee section.
Okay. But that would be the only Kentucky lake that would have Florida strain that I'm aware of.
That is not a private lake. There are some private lakes that have Florida strain in them.
Okay. Well, I know, Chris, me and you've had this conversation many times. We talk about local lakes, and, Mark, they said you've been, our lakes aren't like your lake, not near as fertile. So we're definitely comparing apples to oranges. Paintsville Lake's probably 1,200 acres. Dewey Lake, probably about the same. So we're talking about, I guess, a glorified pond, more or less.
Big ditch.
Yeah. I mean, so, you put 50 boats in, and our lakes get a ton of pressure. I'm sure you've heard of Yatesville Lake, Mark. It's probably the premier destination in Eastern Kentucky. It being located on US 23 is so convenient for Ohio, West Virginia. So it gets a ton of pressure. But Chris, we talked about F1s, we talked about northerns. I always hear you mention spotted bass. And as a kid, I remember catching spotted bass on Paintsville Lake and other local lakes. I even saw on the Fish and Wildlife, when I looked up the sport fishing assessment here recently, that was one of the reasons that they gave for a potential decline in the population of largemouth bass in Yatesville Lake, people mistaking those two. So if you could, Chris, just give us a quick definition, the easiest way to tell a spotted bass, and maybe why you feel like those bass could be supplemented locally.
Well, spotted bass is, one that we do the old school way of telling one of the tongue and the jaw line. It'd be the second. And, but I'm with you on the F1. I would like to see F1s tried in Paintsville Lake because of the grass that's out there. I mean, I think that could be on the table. And speaking of table, our Judge McKenzie here in Johnson County, our county judge, is real interested, doing a great job. He has got the commissioner of the Fish and Wildlife set up a meeting with us to give our voice and be heard of putting F1s and a stocking program starting in Paintsville Lake. That's going to happen in 2 weeks. So that's exciting news.
That's great.
Put on
that's good.
And so we've got that working right now. Mark and Bobby McCool was another guy that's been pushing hard, and him and Mark has been pushing hard together to try to get that in here. So that was good news.
I built the website for the county. I have a little bit of, I guess, rubbing elbows with them. And one of the things that they ask, and Mark, we're with you, we're blessed. I think Mark McKenzie, Regina McClure, who works with Mark McKenzie and our local county government, they sent me an email a month ago. They said, what can we do? Because they're aware of the economics. What can we do to get people? We've got a new campground. They're working with the Corps is not easy. I'm gonna be nice, but we're getting some things going. Chris, I know you're with Casting for Kids. You're putting a dock out there. It's not like Chris Ferguson shows up with some equipment and says, "Hey, I'm going to build this dock. It's not going to cost you anything." It's not that easy, right?
No, we've worked on this now for probably, Jason, I'd say a year and a half. It's been a long time. It's going to be called Casting for Kids Boardwalk. Mm-hmm. This thing's going to be about 300 foot long, and it's going to be concrete, 8 foot wide, and it's going to be a foot off the water table. And we are going to incorporate, thanks to Mark McKenzie, our judge, that is, went ahead and went a step farther of putting in a kayak launch that's going to be out there with its own dock on the cut that's on the right of the dock out there, that little pocket out past the picnic shelter and the handicap playground. That ramp is going to go around 300 feet around, a foot off the water table. Why we're doing this is because we can give a disabled child the same feeling that someone that can walk, another child that can go down there and skip a rock and catch a fish, they can walk that boardwalk. And we hope that this will start a chain throughout the whole state of giving a disabled child the same feeling of bringing a fish in off the water, that where they can't walk down there physically, we want to give them that same feeling. And that's what our goal is. And we're hoping, with the help with the judge here in the county that stepped up, he's going to be making an announcement coming up here shortly that this is going to go through. The casting.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
So we worked a long time on this thing, and it's coming. So
and I think for us, continuing conversations, talking about fishery management, sometimes it's a touchy subject. It seems like anytime that we talk about, it's automatic. Well, we're doing it this way. We can't change. I think when you look at the data, more people are fishing now during COVID than ever before, going by license sales. Like you guys said, I guess from going from an entry-level fisherman to an expert fisherman with YouTube and all the resources, I don't know that you can necessarily be an expert, but it's a little easier. So I think there's a lot of reasons that more people are fishing nowadays. So it would be hard for me to believe that, okay, we've managed Paintsville Lake, let's say, like this for this many years. If they're getting more pressure, I know one of the things that I hear is they think that people are keeping more bass. If that's happening, then we need to change our strategy, our management strategy, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Well, the big thing is habitat, Jason. I mean, if you've got grass in the lake, that increases the habitat, and that's going to put more fish in a said body of water. I realize that you all over there in Eastern Kentucky, you live in a lot of verticality. There are a lot of hollers and a lot of hills, and that doesn't produce a lot of flat area to rear a lot of fish. Right. On Kentucky Lake, I'm blessed that it's flat. The average depth of Barkley is 5 feet. The average depth of Kentucky is 9 feet. So the fish can live in that zone year round. You step right off the edge of some of the places over there where you all are, is 25, 30, 50, maybe 100 feet deep. That doesn't leave a lot of habitat. So I'm glad when we were talking earlier, you said you have more vegetation in Paintsville, or was it Yatesville you were saying had
Paintsville has a ton, and even like Dewey has come on lately, which the winter drawdown will maybe wipe some of that out. But Paintsville, there's only a 1 foot drawdown mark. So in terms of that's and they even quoted this in the sport fishing data. They said the limited drawdown helps sustain bass populations better, right? I mean, and that's one of the things I saw. Florida stream were sensitive to huge drawdowns, correct?
They are. They don't do well when that system changes that much. But habitat is the key. And in some of those lakes over there that I've been to, there's not a lot of cover. So we've got to have cover of some sort, whether it be natural cover in grasses and things like that, or it's man-made put cover that we put in there. Over here on Kentucky and Barkley, we have had an extensive program where we're putting in spawning habitat as well as more habitat on the old winter pool line, such that these fish are going to have more places to spawn and they can rear their young and grow bigger. So cover, habitat are the two biggest things, because a lake, guys, can only hold X amount of fish. That's called the carrying capacity. It can carry more than that, but if you have more bass in the lake, or you have more bluegill in the lake, or more crappie in the lake, whatever it is, something else has got to come down and equalize that up, because it can only hold so many fish. And that's what the biologists are trying to do, is keep that natural balance as best it can.
And so crazy, question here, Mark, and you may laugh at me when I ask this one to you, but I watch the Pay Lake guys. All right. So they grow a catfish to set amounts. They truck them in, they dump them in the water, and guys go catch those fish. My question is, I saw at Lake Norman, they stocked, I don't know how many, it was 8-inch F1s. Now, those are all more than likely keeper fish next summer. So why, when you look at, and I know there's a balance and it's a lot more complicated than I'm making it sound.
Sure.
Why couldn't you dump 1,000 8-inch F1s in Paintsville Lake for each of the next 5 years? Is that
one
crazy?
Thing it'll do, Jason, is as that F1, that first year, we dump them in this year, let's say, and those fish go to maturity and they spawn with a northern largemouth, then that becomes an F2. And you essentially start breeding that Florida gene out of that fish.
Gotcha.
And it lessens that northern gene. So you almost come up with a mutt, so to speak, just like a dog. And do we want that fish that may grow or it may not grow, or we change the traits of the fish that is our native fish in the area? That's the big argument right there. Do we risk changing the native fish that we have? That's the big deal.
And so you honestly have me thinking, and what if you did 8-inch northern shrimp? You know what I mean? Is that a crazy scenario to pull up and drop 1,000 keeper fish just based on the economics that we know? The average guy is going to go out on Saturday. Heck, let's say we got $100 entry fee. We're spending $100 in gas, on Yatesville Lake. I think a lot of these rural communities that are embracing, adventure tourism, I think some of them are sleeping on the fishing side of that. I feel like we as bass fishermen, guys down there at Yatesville Lake in the springtime, there's a lot of dudes that are heavily invested. There's a lot of money being spent, Sure. So if you just supplemented our population, I don't know that I'm for, the smaller fingerlings. I would love to see supplementation take place in some way, but Mark, Tim, you guys, Chris, any of you guys jump in. I feel like the larger fingerlings, if we are able to get a supplementation program going, have a much better chance. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate. It's a cost. It's a cost of raising that fish from here to here. And it's an astronomical cost. That's a big issue right there.
Right.
That's the data. The real success story that Mark and I dealt with was Lake Norman. I mean, in the early years of the 90s, Lake Norman, you were lucky to catch 5 or 6 pound limit over there, 12-inch fish. They did an extensive stocking and bait program with spotted bass, and they turned. I'd love to know what their economic numbers are for Charlotte in that area, how much that lake has improved in the fishing and what the tourism has seen from that.
Yeah, it'd be astronomical. I mean, everybody wants to go and catch some fish, and we all know that we're not going to catch 10 pounders on every cast, but the average fellow that loves to fish, he doesn't want to drive 2.5 hours and go catch one.
Right.
He doesn't want to go catch 2. He wants to catch 15, 18, 20, 25, whatever he can. And it doesn't really matter if they're just keeper fish or they're 2-pounders or 3-pounders. He wants some action because he's worked hard all week. He's spending his hard-earned money, and he wants some enjoyment out of that. So it's a hard call, but I'm glad that you all are raising this topic to your economic development people, your judge executives. It sounds like you're getting some footing there. I just wish that your all's lakes were bigger so that they would hold more fish and it would hold more anglers. But the other real thing that could probably benefit you guys is that habitat. Improvement of the habitat would be a big help there.
And so that, leads me to a follow-up question there. And especially you were talking about spawning. Like you said, our lakes, if you don't spawn on the bank, there aren't a lot of, I've seen fish spawn in Paintsville Lake in 80 feet of water in a treetop. Sure. You guys have seen crazy stuff like that. So when you're talking about improving spawning habitat, Mark, I've seen, the guys put the dishes out, and when you're talking about spawning habitat, what can we do, I guess is my question.
Well, here on Kentucky Lake, we've got a lot of mud, we've got a lot of mud flats and things like that. That's where we're working on those implementations for better habitat. You guys, the verticality is what's so big there. And you really can't help dramatic rises like you all get in your all's lakes because they're just so vertical. If it's all rock over there where you are, and if a drop of water hits up here at the top of the hill, it's coming down the hill. It's not going to stop and
wait. Evidence of that today.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm talking more. I don't know so much about your spawning habitat, just to have a place for the young of the year to hide, whether that would be cutting down trees or implementation of brush piles or plastic man-made type structures to go in there for those places, fish to have a place to hide. That's what probably needs to happen. Our lakes are old in the state of Kentucky. Yeah. And one of the things we're blessed with in Kentucky, we got more miles of navigable water than any other state in the lower 48. So we've got lots of water and lots of places to fish. So, that's the one great thing. We're not too far from another lake that could turn on fire and get to catching them. And how many of you guys have been over to Cedar Creek?
Me, I have several times. Yeah. Mark, I'm not going to lie. Probably my best bass fishing day ever was on Cedar Creek Lake in February about 3 or 4 years ago.
Right.
Me and a buddy went down and we just pulled up to the right spot. They were eating so good that there were dead shad floating up and we whacked them. That's my best bass fishing day ever, but it's hit or miss,
Well, it is. And it gets a lot of pressure, but it's got a lot of area in that lake where anglers really can't get a line into with all that timber. And then every now and then the grass population blows up in there. It's being managed as a trophy fishery. And it's evidence that proper management techniques work. And we do have a good, solid fish and wildlife department. I would like to pat those guys on the back. They always hear it from bass fishermen. Well, you need to do this. You need to do that. We have a good group that works really hard and provide our fisheries and our wildlife a great benefit. So it's good to talk with them. It's good to get this conversation moving. We want things better. And we may get some of those things, but it is a long, slow, arduous process.
Absolutely. Tim, I know, something that speaks to your heart, your son, Bryce, is out competing on the high school circuit, him and Ethan Elliott. I've got blessed to have both those two guys in class, but, in terms of, managing our opportunities, Dewey Lake seems like it's having a comeback, Tim. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I don't know exactly what happened on Dewey with the grass situation there, but you could see it back 5-6 years ago. We were really coming on with the size of the fish, and I think that we're getting off a whole lot better spawns. I think the small bass had a place to hide in the grass, and that's one of the things, like you were talking about Paintsville. I think it's got the grass for that. I think the habitat's there. We just need to do some stocking programs and get the state on board what we would like to see in the area. But Dewey, I'm telling you, it's the biggest thing that you could do for Dewey Lake is it needs some dredge work, obviously, and needs a little work on the ramps. But the lake itself it can be awesome at times, like all lakes, and it can be tough. But I do see it coming on.
You know, Bryan, I mean, you've had this discussion. Me and Bryan, we text off and on about crazy things as it relates to those little green fish. And but anyway,
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that we talked about in the sport fishing data, the recent sport fishing data, you could see a difference in they used 5 metrics, I think, with the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife when they evaluate a fishery with electrofishing. Every single metric improved after successive years of stocking. When they stocked in 13, 14, 15, 16, I think they said they had low natural recruitment in those years. But then come 2018, after they had those successive years of stocking, it was almost eye-opening to me how much the fishery improved. So, Bryan, do you feel like – I'll put you on the spot here. Do you feel like what we're doing is enough? Do you feel like maybe we could do more? What do you think there?
I have to watch my mouth when it comes to the Corps of Engineers and the Fish and Wildlife. And my biology degree, I got it out of a Cracker Jack box. So a good friend of ours, Randy Fannin, sent me some information. This isn't regarding Dewey Lake, but talking about Paintsville from, I want to say 2014 or so, for 5 consecutive years. And I'll get him to send that to you, Jay. You can post it. The number of fish that they put in Paintsville Lake, mind-boggling. But they's all that big. I'm not the smartest person in the world, but all you're doing is free food because of the habitat. You put them in there, they get eat so quick, in my opinion. That's just my 2 cents worth. But Dewey Lake, every one of us around here grew up fishing Dewey Lake. You know, it's a 50-year project. It got completed in 1949 or 50 or something. And anytime anybody around here asks for help to do any kind of improvement, I beg for a trash boom up at the bridge. And the Corps of Engineers, I don't have words for it. They won't let you do anything. And all I can say is the politicians, we all want to see our areas grow and develop for our kids and everybody else. The people need to look at Dandridge, Tennessee. They need to look at Green Pond Landing, Lake Hartwell, and a couple other places. Those towns are growing exponentially because of fishing.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I'd love to see the financial sheet from the Louis of Sunoco from March through June, because I mean, there's a lot of people around here. There's a lot of people around here that tournament fish, and you can probably times that by whatever that fish to just get out and go fishing. But we sit and scream, carry on about it. The boys don't know what they're talking about. Well, here's you a couple of examples. Look at the impact it's having on that community. So that's my 2 cents worth.
And, I'm being critical. I feel like Mark said, Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife doing an incredible job. I've watched the restoration of elk here in Eastern Kentucky. I've heard stories. Trinity Shepard is a great friend of mine. We're even talking about, maybe doing something with a podcast, me and Trinity, in the future. But some of the things in the success projects, awesome, unbelievable, models for the rest of the country. But, I guess we're just asking questions about why can't, maybe, what if, But yeah. I think one thing being critical of Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife, they do stuff, but you don't necessarily see about it. They're going to put 10,000 trout in Paintsville Lake in February. Well, that's one of the reasons that we're growing those bass out there that look like they came out of the Bass Pro Shops aquarium. I mean, Mark, That's a great source of protein, right?
It's as good as it gets.
So they're going to dump 10,000 of those things in there, but you have to dig through the website to find that. So I don't know. I feel like they could maybe do just a little bit better. Take a cell phone, show me a quick video dumping those trout in the lake and post it. I mean, you know, I feel maybe in that way they could do a little better job.
Well, Jay, I don't mean to interrupt you, but one thing I wanted to say there too while I was talking, Tim McDonald, me and him talked about this a couple of years ago, and looking at Paintsville Lake, and he's exactly right, and he could expand on this, but Tim said that would make a destination spot lake with the clear water, just the way it's laid out, and habitat, everything, that it could be unreal for spot fishing.
Yeah, you know, and looking at what we have to do other than express the fact we would like to see some of these things, we're going to have to compile the data, like Mark's saying. It costs a lot of money, and this all comes down to economics. And we're going to have to be able to present and show the county judges and the people that get it started for us what the economic impact could be for each one of these communities. And I know that Paintsville Lake and Yatesville Lake, if a stocking program of some sort goes on there along with the bait fish, I know that those two destinations can grow and provide a tremendous amount of economic help to an area that's suffering. And we need that help.
Tim, that's exactly how you talk to your politicians is about the money. And the 12 counties that border Kentucky and Barkley Lakes, when I brought up the number that those 12 counties were each losing $1 million a month, $12 million a year in each county times 12, they started clicking real quick how many tax dollars that were being lost there. And then that's when I started getting some traction with the folks in Washington, D.C., when they realized that money flow had stopped from all the people coming in vacation, enjoying Kentucky and Barkley Lakes, the land between the lakes. At that point, they were like, whoa, now there's the problem. Now, are the carp the problem? Is this the carp being the problem? And then once I could explain to them how the fishery had declined and what happens when the carp come into the system, the injuries, which, you know, when you see that silver carp jump, that's a shocking thing. But what they really don't understand is that the big head carp is eating 10 times as much. They get 10 times as big as the silver carp, and they cause more economic damage than the black carp come in there and eat everything, every crustacean and every mollusk on the bottom. Then you can really get into the worst. But it's all about the economic. It's about the amount of money that is being lost. It's not coming into those counties as to getting more votes and things like that. It gets all very complicated on how it all gets tied in. But the trail of the money, if you can nail down the money that would come into those counties associated with those lakes and get somebody to do an economic forecast, then you'll be able to say, hey, here's what can happen. And then this is what we can do with our area and make our little spot in the sun that much better.
And, you know, you'd be surprised. I know you don't think it. Nobody does. Nobody thinks of Eastern Kentucky as a bass fishing destination. You would be surprised at Paintsville Lake, since the campground, how many of those people come from Ohio to Eastern Kentucky because that's south for them, you know, and bass fish. So I just think if you had the opportunity, if you could take, like they do at Chickamauga, come on, guys, Chickamauga is the greatest marketed lake in the country. Every week, somebody's got a picture of an 8-pounder on there. So if you could do that in Eastern Kentucky, I just think people would jump over top of each other to get down here to try to catch fish. So, I mean, I'm 1,000% with you. I think, you know, that's probably the next step for us is to try to get some data. Bryan, you'll think I'm crazy, but I swear I started to call McDonald's because, you know, I worked at Fazoli's when I first got out of college. You know, I guarantee that on Saturdays when fishing tournaments start, that their sales spike. You know they do.
The Hardee's off of 23 there.
Every Saturday.
Yeah. Yeah. You know it.
I mean, so I definitely think, you know, that there's some economic data to support, you know, our push. I don't know. In my heart, I want to believe that F1s would work here. I know that, you know, Mark, tell me if I'm wrong, but if you look at the current growth rates in our lakes, we're growing a 3-year-old northern strain largemouth is between 11 and 13 inches going by the data since 1990. I'm one of those people that, okay, they say a 3-year-old F1 could be 4.5 to 7 pounds. I guess the reality is that we're going to be on the lower end because our growth rate's not that great in the first place.
You probably would be, and that all goes back to what kind of food is available to the bait fish populations and things like that. Where we get these magnificent growth rates with these F1s are these little small private places that feed is constantly being put in there. And when you keep dumping truckloads of crawdads in there and truckloads of shad in there, they don't have anything to do but eat, and they look like beach balls by the time they're 15 inches long. But in a natural situation, they will carry a bigger growth rate, and that 3-year-old fish may be a 15 to 17 inch fish, which is a 2.5 pound fish probably in your Rawls Lake. So to have more 2.5 pounders that you've got in there right now may be more of the optimum thing than thinking we're going to grow 8, 9, and 10 pounders in the short term. So they will grow faster. They grow in clear water lakes. They grow in dirty water lakes like Dewey. They're a very resilient fish, that F1 is, and they're a very special fish because they do some really neat things. But on the negative side of it, Jason, they're more aggressive. They can be more aggressive because of that northern gene in there, and you can fish them out a lot quicker as well. So it would take a repetitive stocking each year to do this. I wasn't going to mention this, but I think I will, and this may be something you guys may want to inquire about. There was a tournament in Alabama out of one of the biggest tackle stores in Birmingham called Mark's Outdoors, and it was basically a parent-child type tournament. We would have 300 to 500 entries in it. Parent-children got in free. They brought in all kinds of pros. We all got paired up and fished with different people, and we raised an awful lot of money. But one of the key things that every boat got a little bag that was full of 25 fingerlings. Most of them were Floridas. And we took, and your rule stated that those fish had to be released before you could make your first cast. Now, some people just dumped them in the ramp right there by the ramp and let their fish go so they could start fishing, or some of us ran to back pockets and put them in there, whatever. But it changed Lay Lake. It changed the complete population of all of those fish. Those fish grew, and we really dominated that lake with largemouth. So it helped that fishery, but now we're seeing some residual effects of the natural spotted bass fishery there, which was so good on the Coosa River. It's hard to catch those 4-pound and 5-pound spotted bass there. So there's a trade-off on everything we do, but that whole thing was from a retail store that did it on their own. And it created, the Bassmaster Classics that we've had there, they're all won with largemouth because of the Mark's Outdoors tournament, is my opinion only on that. But it's something you may want to inquire about if you could do that. Offer that to the state of Kentucky and see what they say. They may put the brakes on it. They may welcome it.
So two crazy things here. Number one, I wrote that article 2 weeks ago just talking about F1s and growth rates and just kind of introducing the idea, I guess, locally. You'd be amazed at the guys. You wouldn't be, Mark, because you know how the money in this game is. But it was amazing how many guys were like, how much does it cost? I'll give how much, I swear I believe I could have raised the money to pay for the initial, and just the guys that were interested.
Absolutely.
But in what you said, and I read this, there's data to back up exactly what you said. When they first introduced Florida strain to Chickamauga, I think it was 2010. When they first introduced those fish, they did not strategically put those fish in certain areas of the lake. I guess it was just more of a pull up to the ramp and dump them in there sort of deal. They found that after, I think it was 2 or 3 years, it was less than like 15% F1s or Florida strains, but they found a significant, when they started strategically putting those fish in locations with habitat, it jumped to almost 50 or 60%. The success of putting those Florida strains in that lake. Am I correct? And
I don't know the numbers on it. I know that it was a significant upgrade. They got a significant upgrade in quality. But the one unique thing about Chickamauga on the entire Tennessee River system is that it had so much grass at that time. It had a real high population of grass. And the one thing you don't want to have happen in a bass lake is if you get surface acreage coverage of more than 15 to 25% of grass, fishing actually goes down.
Right.
Predation goes down. The size of your fish go down. They can't feed as well. So it was a real natural balance there. Guntersville is going through an inverse of that right now. Now that the eelgrass has gotten established in Guntersville, it's not surface acreage, but it is complete bottom coverage of vegetation from the surface to 14 or 15 feet now. And you don't see as much milfoil. You don't see as much hydrilla anymore. The eelgrass has grown out there, and the catch ratios on the lake have gone down. It has just scattered those fish out where fishermen don't put lures, and it gives those fish a harbor of safety away from the 10 brush piles that are in one lake or whatever that everybody goes and fishes. So that habitat is so important, and having the right habitat you will see big dividends. If you don't have the right habitat, the dividend won't be quite as good.
Completely understand. Well, guys, we've had a great conversation. I usually try to keep these at about an hour. I just wanted to give all y'all a huge thank you for taking an hour to spend some time talking bass fishing. Thank you for taking an hour out of your Sunday night and kicking around some ideas and whatnot in relation to chasing some little green fish. So I appreciate your all's time. What I wanted to do real quick is just remind everybody to go over to casting4kids.net, register if you're interested in that tournament. There are 2 dates. You've got the Douglas event, and then you've got the Paintsville Yatesville event, right, Chris?
Yep.
And then you've got the kayak tournament, the kids tournament. So you can find all that information over on the website. You can register over there. You can pay over there. You can get all that done there. East Kentucky Tournament Trail, Bryan Allen. You can go over to the Facebook page, like the Facebook page, East Kentucky Tournament Trail. Bryan, we've gotten a ton of interest from all over the state. East Tennessee guys now aware of the trail. So it seems like we're going to have maybe more boats than ever this year.
Hey, we're blessed. I'll be honest with you. There are a lot of people with a sickness like we have. And we've got guys already fish from Central Kentucky, West Virginia. We picked up a couple teams last year, Jay, because of some of your fishing video stuff, which is always, it's top notch. I love watching it. And
I appreciate that.
I don't know. I love it.
We've been lucky, hopefully we can preserve that thing going forward and continue to grow. Tim, thanks for spending some time with us tonight. I know, you guys got a high school season coming up. That's kind of more your priority in 2022, correct?
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is. Bryce has been sitting out here listening to us talk and everything, and he's biting at the bit, wanting to get out there and get going. Matter of fact, he's been pushing me to get him down to Guntersville and fish right now, and he doesn't understand how much time it takes to get down there and get back.
I'm convinced that Bryce has been seeing those pictures that I've been sharing about OHIV, and that Tim McDonald's got an OHIV trip in his future. That's what I'm convinced.
Yeah, I'd say you're exactly right. And I was talking to Bill Smith last night about his time out in Texas and guiding out there, and he was trying to get me to plan a trip to go. And there's a lot of really big fish lakes around the country. Especially in Florida. There's some new lakes seems like they're opening every day down there, and you hear about a 10 or 12 pounder almost immediately. So it's but 22 is going to be, hopefully we can catch some fish. So I was really proud of the boys last year, their first year out, and doing 4th place down at Kentucky Lake, and Bryce being fortunate enough to catch big bass, the tournament, and it's pretty exciting for them. And then we went down to the World and fished, and they just got a whole new experience, 400 or 500 boats and what competition really looks like. So they're excited.
Mark, those 2 boys are 8 up. I mean, they are 8 up. The head to toe, they're 8 up, aren't they, Bryan? I mean, those 2 boys, they live, eat, sleep. I've got Ethan Elliott in class, and he probably get mad at me for telling, but he's been on me for 2 weeks. He got a new live scope, and I'm kind of jack of all trades, master of none, but he put me on the spot, and I couldn't tell him no, so I guess I'm going to help him install that live scope. But these two boys are 8 up. I mean, they've definitely got a future in fishing. I'm excited to follow them. I feel like both of them are going to make some noise, out there catching fish, without a doubt.
Yeah, they're two good boys right there.
Absolutely. But Mark, we want to just take from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for spending some time with us tonight. Thank you for talking fishing. If you ever, catch yourself out this way and had an urge to jump in a boat, I know I could speak for these other 3 guys. We would be honored to have you in our boat at any point in time. So, if something happens, we ever cross paths, I don't know, Mark, I'm decent with a camera. Maybe I could film some stuff for you or whatever. I'm just putting that out there, but I'm just saying.
Well, I'd love to come up there and help you with this project and see if we can get some things moving on that. See if we can get some people to hear you so that we can make the fishing better right there in your all's area. And I'd be glad to come up there and do that. Would love to do that, and appreciate you guys having me on here tonight.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time. I think we got another great episode. I can't wait to pump this out. And we'll wrap it up, guys. Again, make sure you go over and casting4kids.net and go over to the Facebook page, East Kentucky Tournament Trail, and you can find all that information to join that trail there. Guys, thanks for taking the time tonight. Have a good evening.